Hopeful for tomorrow, good enough today. Oh yeah, hopeful for tomorrow, good enough today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Good Enough Today, the podcast where we share stories from people showing up authentically in their own spaces every day. I'm your host, Cheremma Lee, and today my guest is Delley. How are you, Ty?
I'm doing well.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to have you here, and I usually go through everyone's credentials. You have been a researcher, you are an executive director, a president, a community person that gets out and does all the engagement. And I would venture to say a leader of people and a caring heart that wants to do better in this world. So thank you for being here today. We're going to strip all of that away.
Okay.
We're going to talk about how you are. And my listeners know we start every podcast with the most important question. How are you doing today? Physically, emotionally, mentally, on a scale from 1 to 10,
Okay.
on each one.
Okay, let me think. Well, physically, I have a few things going on, but I'm doing all right for the most part, so I'll give that one a 7.
Okay.
Emotionally, I would say I'm probably at a 9 right now. Doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And mentally, yeah, I'll say an 8.
Really?
Yeah,
I just not doing this. Okay, so I have to give a gauge of like what is for you. What would be a 1?
Well, I would say physically a 1 would be like I'm incapable of getting out of bed.
Okay,
that's yeah. So
okay.
and I would say emotionally a 1 is when I think, gosh, I really wish I didn't have to get out of bed.
That's fair. That's fair.
And mentally a 1 for me is when that one's like I'm thinking about emotion versus mentally. I think mentally is when I just am so zapped that I just can't I can't clear through the junk to figure out how to move forward. So I mean those are actually really good numbers for me. Like I haven't always been there, and in the not so recent past, I haven't been there. So yeah, we're catching you good.
That's a good time. That's awesome because for me, a 1 is more like it's probably about the same. I can't move. I can't think. Everything's kind of just there. But you know, if someone asked me, like, you go to the hospital, like on a scale from 1 to 10, how you feeling? I'm like, if I was a 1, it'd be like I'm in a coma. Like that's where I feel like. So I always like to ask you. Some people have a different scale of 1 to 2, so that way
I will have to share with you afterwards. Something I saw at a doctor's office, and they had like anchor points of like 1, you're being mauled by a bear.
Oh, I mean,
10 was mauled by a bear, and 1 was mauled by a bear, and 10. Anyway,
I hear you. I think
it was actually really good. So 10 was mauled by a bear.
Yeah,
it was actually really funny. I thought, actually, you should do that everywhere. Say really provides people some good content.
That might be a 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is bringing you joy right now?
Oh, wow, it's such a good question. And I can just hit that from so many different angles. I would say professionally, what is bringing me joy right now is the fact that I get to do every day what I love to do. And that is build this organization because we're helping people find their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is truly bringing me a lot of joy. I would say on the day-to-day, my digging in every day to my faith and what that looks like, and joy, really understanding that joy isn't about being happy, that joy is an inner contentedness that that's regardless of the situation. That is something that as I grow in that is actually bringing me a lot of joy to figure out what joy truly is.
Okay, that I see you taking me already off track because that the journey for joy, I think, I don't know if it's something that wisdom gives us an experience to understand, but how did you start to recognize that you had to understand joy in a different way?
Yeah. I would say throughout my life, I mean, we always have things that are bumps right along the road, and I've had some big ones. I think probably most recently, and when I say that, I mean the last 6 months to a year, we came upon some really tough, my husband and I, with just this property and kind of financially and different things came on some pretty tricky struggles that I had to choose every day in spite of all the really crazy stuff that was happening. Am I going to get up and just be not even, I don't get irritable. I get just down where I'm just rolling through, but it's not, it's not a good space. And I'm sure people around me go, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? And I'm like, I can't get out of the heaviness of this moment. And it was when I really started digging into, gosh, that Bible, dang it just has such good things all the time. But when I started digging into that James chapter 1, verse 1 through or 2 through 5, I think he talks about consider joy, or rather when you encounter various trials, and that testing produces endurance, and endurance perfects our faith. And I started to think like, wow, consider it joy. Consider this joy. So that isn't because I'm happy about it, but what we started to see happen was when we truly dug into those trials and said, we're here for the long haul, we're going to trust, that we did realize like there is a joy of being anchored that was new and different. And so I would say it's through those trials that you start to realize what true joy means.
No, I think that's a great answer. It's interesting that you quoted that verse because my nephew used to say things were hard, not like the Bill's character. And he said, yeah, every time I get something's hard, you tell me that. I was like, it's in the Bible. No, yeah. And so I had to go find it. I was like, I don't believe that's actually in the Bible. And I was like, no, that it really is. You know, you have to endure it. And then he's like, So he didn't challenge me, but it's interesting that you brought that verse up. You will not like hearing that on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. You just read that whole thing. So it's a pretty heavy verse when you dig that.
And I'm horrible at reciting verses. Like I'm good at, I recite them and you're like, was that?
My husband just, I would say I definitely.
Yes, that's basically what it was. So you grew up in Nebraska.
I did.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about how that worked. Were you in like city Nebraska?
Oh, no. So I have 3 siblings. I'm the oldest, and my dad actually was a farmer, which not by trade. It was actually a really terrible decision on their part. But so they decided to become farmers, and my grandfather financed that little venture for them for a while until the mid 80s when the farming crisis hit, and then everything went way crazy. So they had to get out of that. Almost lost our houses, this whole thing. But so I would say that from the time I was 10 on, I grew up in the country. I didn't grow up on a farm any longer, but I had animals and stuff. I went to a very small high school. I graduated with 6 kids. 6? Yes. So I was valedictorian, but I guess that says much. With 6 kids, like it's not hard to please a few other people. But I did, and then I went to the University of Nebraska and I moved to Lincoln at that point. But yeah, I think that living in the country was truly my mom. My mom was a gritty person. Mm-hmm. Like my parents are gritty, but my mom was gritty. And I think I didn't realize how much I appreciated that until I grew up and I thought, I want to be gritty like that. Mm-hmm. So definitely have heard a thing for that, like, oh yeah, watch me kind of mentality. And then I went to the University of Nebraska and walked into my very first class had more people in that class than I had in my entire town.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty big transition, but good.
Yes. And so you just took it by storm, and you ran with it, and you graduated from the University of Nebraska. How much of a culture shock was it for you?
You know, I mean, the town I grew up in was close enough to Lincoln. I was in Lincoln all the time anyway, so I didn't feel like that was like such a big culture shock. And I decided to make it small. So when I was in some of those really big lecture classes where I knew that no one would know me, I purposely went and introduced myself to all of those professors. And I thought if they connect a face and a name, maybe they'll give me some grace if I like mess up the paper. I don't know. But I really just, I tried to be very intentional about my learning. And the best thing that happened to me in college, this is such a funny story. She probably doesn't even know this, but I had a girl that graduated ahead of me. She got a Regent scholarship, full ride to the university, nothing. She had to pay zero anything for anything. And she failed out her first semester of her freshman year.
Oh, no.
Now, I know this girl is crazy smart, and if she failed out, I'm definitely going to fail. Well, what I didn't know is that she just partied all the time. And so I was like, I'm never missing a class. And I just got very, very focused on my education. But yeah,
I thought it was like the oldest child thing. I don't know. I was probably the opposite. Now I party though. I just, my appreciation for school was a little bit different, I think. So you're in Nebraska, and what gave you your heart for helping people?
I can tell you that specifically. I was in school, I was in college, and I had a friend of mine who was really struggling with math, and I thought, I can help her. Like, I want to help this girl. And so I switched my major. I think I was an accounting major to start with, which, if you know me, that's a really terrible profession for me to have. I thought I was not meant to be an accountant. And then, so I went to teacher's college, and I almost graduated from teacher's college. Like, I had a semester left. And then I was working at Gallup at the time, and I was one of their interviewers, just making outbound phone calls. And they asked me if I would come on and be a manager. And so I think, like, I switched my major, and there were some other reasons for that too. But at that point in time, I realized that really was something I was passionate about, and that could manifest itself in all different kinds of ways. And I look at my career and even some of the things I do, like, on the side, and I go, that's still about empowering people and helping people. But I remember specifically, it was when she was like, I need help. And I thought, oh my gosh, I should be a teacher.
You changed everything.
Changed everything.
That might have been a little extreme, but it might have led you to where you are now. How did you get involved with Gallup?
It's so funny. You're bringing up these funny stories I haven't thought of for so long. So my grandfather, I lived with them when I was in college. So I lived with them as opposed to being in the dorms. But when I was still a junior or senior in high school, I needed a job. And so his accounting firm this is probably where I'm going to be an accountant thinking. His accounting firm was like, we need data entry specialists. And so I was doing this data entry. Well, tax season got over, and they were going to put me in this back room with, like, all the servers in the server room. And they wanted me to just feed pieces of paper into a microfilm. And I was like, there's no windows and no people, and this is not going to work out for me. And so I remember we had somebody, I was in school, and somebody from Gallup was recruiting on campus. And they said, hey, you should apply for a job there. And I remember telling my grandfather that I was going to go work at Gallup, and he was really upset with me. And this is when my gritty mother came in and was like, don't you dare to, she can make her own decisions. So yeah, I started when I was just the end of my freshman year in college, is when I started working at Gallup.
So you went from being an interviewer to doing operations, is that correct?
I managed outbound interviewing in their executive division for a while. So it was managing people that were making, like, business related calls, physicians and executives and things. And it was at that time that the StrengthsFinder assessment came out, and people they realized we do not have any type of support structure in place for when these people, and we did other outbound, like, web surveys too. It was when the web was like, is it a different city? Now I'm dating myself. But the early 90s, and people were like, well, I can't figure out how to do this code, or I don't know how to get online. And so my outbound group, I said, hey, we got this. Like, we'll just start taking the incoming calls. And over the course of the next 12 years, I had started that client support department, and we were supporting all of our clients globally. So I had language translators and all this company, but I'm operations person through and through. So it was the joy of my life to, like, think about taking nothing and making it something. And this is a theme with me, very much a theme with me. So yeah, the operational piece of it really started with that. And then I was also the operations manager for our entrepreneurship program.
Okay. And so have you always been confident? I know that you're kind of like me when it's like, well, if somebody thinks I can't do it, then I'm going to have to prove them wrong. But in those times as you're growing in your career, were there times where you felt like, can I do this? And how do I do it? And you kind of felt lost. And then how did you navigate through those if you had those times?
Well, for sure. 100%. I definitely had those. And in fact, I still think a little bit, I go, who's trusting me with all this? I don't know if they should be. But I remember even thinking when I saw like the managers in different, like when I was an interviewer, when I very first started at Gallup and I saw managers, I said, oh, I'll never be good enough to do that job. Mm-hmm. And it's so weird because I got put in places where I was able to basically like not be something and then grow into something. And those were always really safe spaces for me. But it was, if somebody would have said, hey, someday you're going to be the executive director of this nonprofit, I would have been like, I'm not capable of doing that job. So I think getting out, like I said, I still think every job I've had, I go, I don't know if I'm capable of this. And it's a real, like, that's a real thing that I have to work through. I would say my biggest, well, a couple of things. Every time I revisit my strengths, I know I really am intentional about putting myself in a position where I get to use those. Mm-hmm. And that gives me confidence. My husband is my biggest cheerleader. He's like, Ta, seriously, like, what are you doing? Like, thinking that you can't, like, that's crazy. So I would say if I've gotten myself out of those, and I don't think that that's ever an easy journey, but I'm really hard on myself. And so I always think somebody else would definitely be better at this than me. I'm doing the job, but I bet there's somebody who's like way better that we're doing it. Way better. So it's so much easier. Yeah. And
yes, absolutely. So it's interesting that you mentioned your strengths and you have a unique perspective because of Gallup. Mm-hmm. And so I don't really want to talk about it in terms of Gallup, but your experience with Gallup will definitely give you better insight and actually help us understand that a little bit better too. Because when we talk about our strengths and then finding our passion and living our purpose based upon those strengths, how do you use that to kind of walk in your purpose? And then do you always agree with your strengths, being your strengths? How does that work?
So if we want to talk about if I think about like the assessment itself, I don't know that I could have put clear language around what my strengths were before that.
Okay.
I think I would have said, oh, I like to learn different things, but I wouldn't have felt like around it.
Okay.
I would have probably stumbled into situations where I was using my strengths, like the operational stuff, and being truly very gifted at that, taking nothing and making it something. But I wouldn't have known, oh, you know what? That's because I've got communication and I'm able to communicate a plan and a project. I've got high executing themes of discipline and arranging, all the achiever, like responsibility, all these things. But Gallup, what that assessment did was help me see those things in a way that I could put language around it and start to identify it when I was doing it.
Okay. Now, do you feel like, and this is my fear, I think, because, there are so many assessments, especially on the internet right now. I could go, it'll tell you if you're going to be a serial killer, right? So do you think that it can be limiting for some people? Like if I say that, hey, you know what? I'm a communicator, I'm an achiever, this is who I am. How do people fight the urge to just stay in the box of what they believe that they are instead of seeing how that can look in a lot of different ways?
Well, and I know I'm kind of like geeking out a little bit on this, but like the assessment is not there to say, Cheremma, you need to be in this job. Ty, you need to be in this job. So it's not a career predictor. There could be a million managers, a million executive directors with a whole different set of strengths. So it's how you see the world and get things done. And I would say that those strengths, my strengths, the more I didn't agree with some of them at the beginning, but then the more I walked through different scenarios and circumstances, I would go, oh, shoot, yeah, that is for sure that I am using that every single day. So I think that being able to identify those and realize the different capacities that you can leverage, that you can maximize those strengths, that's where the real magic happens. The one thing that you do have to do is look at the things that are on the bottom of those strengths profiles and say, you know what, I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm not good at that. And I think that assessment specifically is so good at addressing, because it has so many years of research behind it, all the nuances of your personality and who you are, that I think that if I'm being honest with myself, and I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves, would look at where that assessment gauges things and say, I would love to say I'm highly strategic, but I'm not. Now, do I use other strengths to compensate for strategic? For sure. And do I put partnerships around me to help fill in those gaps? Yes, for sure. But yeah, I don't feel like it limits me in what I can do.
Now, how do you find the urge to see the things at the bottom, right? The ones you score the least on.
Yeah.
And not say, well, I'm going to prove it wrong. Like, because some of those are things that we see ourselves as, right? But it's not, when you say put the language around it, right? You look at what the definition is. You're like, okay, well, maybe that's what I want to be, right?
Yeah.
Then how do you fight the urge to just focus so much energy on that, as opposed to focusing on your strengths maybe and letting those things kind of come out with their own, right?
Your experience. Ask me how I know. Because there were things, especially at the bottom, that I was like, I have to get better at that. I have to get better at that. But guess what? I'm worn out when I try to get better at those things that I'm not naturally good at. And so we can get a little bit better if we really, really, really work hard on those things that are on that lower part of the profile, and we can get a little bit better, but we can get exponentially better when we really focus on the things we already have a natural talent for. So I think when I tried to, I'm going to be far more strategic. I had to work way too hard to be strategic.
Yes.
In the way that my husband's strategic.
Mm-hmm.
He sits down and it's a natural, like he's look, that's just him. Mm-hmm. So I quit. And now I quit. I quit doing that. I start saying, you know what? Who are the people I need to put around me that are so good at that? And imagine, like, I don't know your strengths yet, and we should have found this out. And if somebody, my friend Delley and I, that we teach the program from Grabe together, if she has a project to do, she can contact me and say, I have this thing, like, will you help me build a plan? Do you think that high executing, that I'm like, oh, what a drag? No, I am lit up because Devon's like, yes, she's asked me to do something. So you realize that other people are going to see that as an opportunity to thrive. Mm-hmm. And they are so excited that they get to come alongside and help you. And I do the same thing. So I think that, to me, at that point, I went, I am not going to waste my time and energy trying to fix something that is dragging me down. It's hard. I don't thrive at it. I'm going to do what I do best. And I'm going to put really good people around me that can fill in those gaps.
I think that's amazing, because I am not really good at that, first off. But, well, it depends, right? I would love to find people, but I'm also one of those people that is hesitant, right? Just like you said, people are eager to help, but I'm like, well, they're busy. Right? Like, I'll give that, like, well, I don't want to bother somebody. Let me just try to figure it out. Then I'll spend, 20 hours. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to figure this out. Right. And I wonder how many of us kind of get stuck in those moments. And then we get discouraged. Right. And then it's like, well, I'm not good at this, but we're putting our energy towards the wrong thing. So how would I be able to, in the moment, identify, well, maybe you're just putting your energy in the thing that's not your strength?
When I wear it out. I really do think it's when you're sitting there, if it's the last thing that you want to do and you keep putting it off, and then you finally tackle it and it just literally almost takes you out. Like, we're energized when we are operating out of those things that we do best. We get very bogged down. So I think in that moment, or you could just look at, like, what you're like, in my job, what do I have to do? And it may be still part of my job, but that doesn't mean I can't go ask my buddy down the hall or a coworker or a friend. I mean, this operates in our personal life. This is applicable in every context. And you know that there's people that are better and really thrive, and they don't have to have taken, they're not going to take it. You can tell, you can tell. So you just go, I bet they would love helping me with that. But I do think it's truly when it bogs you down and it's the last thing you want to do. Those are the things I think that are those really quick indicators.
It's interesting because I said I was going to strip all your time and just talk about you, and then you just talk about Gallup all the time, right? But I think that you have a unique perspective on it. And I really think about it in terms of the people who don't have access to Gallup, right? Mm-hmm. Which is actually pretty easy to have access to right now, right? But for people who are just either students, right, who are going into college or in high school, and one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people to understand that their environment doesn't dictate their potential, right? And so if we're going to do this organically without Gallup, right?
Yeah.
How would you say, look at your strengths. This is a strength. How would you know this is something that you're good at? And then how do you cultivate that without the tools? Maybe you have any insight on that.
Yeah, I don't know that my answer is a lot different. I think it's going to be the things that you just naturally gravitate to, right? I think that so here's a really good example. My husband and I were in Haiti in 2010 after the earthquake. And we looked over and there was this little kid. And I mean, I'm talking go naive. It's like one of the worst parts of that country. And these kids were playing down in this little swampy area. And this kid had built this car out of like a can. And he'd found different things to make wheels. And he'd done all this stuff. That kid does not know that his strengths have to do with his ability to build, right? He doesn't know that. But it's what you're gravitating to. You can look at, and I like to just think of things out of, again, this is still kind of like Gallup language, but when you think about, are you a relationship builder? Like, is that something that you thrive in? And you can look at that and know that. I mean, or are you someone who likes to put things together and organize them? So are you somebody who likes to think about the future and what that can look like? Are you someone that is, that's cheerleading everybody else? So I think to be able to think about things in some framework, right? You got to kind of think about it in some framework, but in your day-to-day life, whether it's school or work or whatever that may be, even as a kid growing up, are you the person on the football team that's getting everybody else excited? Mm-hmm. Are you the person on the football team who's casting that vision for where you can go? Are you the person on the football team who's thinking about how we can put the pieces together and be better next time? So I think in any of those environments, it's like taking a step back and going, when can I say 10, I had a great day? Mm-hmm. It's what did I get to do that day? And I don't think it has to be always in the sense of even school.
Right. Okay, that's a great answer. Now, I haven't talked about Unbridled at all. And mostly because what I would like to understand is how do you go from Gallup to Unbridled? And then, like, what keeps you in that space? First off, can you tell us a little bit about Unbridled? And then also, what drives you and motivates you to do that?
Yeah, so, well, I'll start with Unbridled and I'll work backwards a little bit. I'll do the elevator version of it. Such a funny story. But so Unbridled is an equine. Technically, we're an equine assisted services organization. We don't really get to hold the title equine assisted therapy because we're not doing one-on-one like psychotherapy. So it's truly equine assisted psychoeducation. So we're teaching people about their brains, and when they're in fight, flight, or freeze, we're helping them understand, like, moving up through. So my coworker Debbie teaches psychology at UMHB, and so she works people through that. When we're in our brainstem and we're making those irrational decisions, how do we move from that space to the space where we start to think a little bit more clearly? And ultimately, how are we moving in this prefrontal cortex where we're using our whole brain, which is where we all want to be all the time. Mm-hmm. And then while we're doing that, we're teaching about their strengths. We're helping people understand their value system, their passions, and who they can impact with those passions. And ultimately, when you put all those things together, that you're saying, I mean, this truly is your defining a purpose. So our target groups are veterans, first responders, at-risk youth, and then also we've just started to learn like this disadvantaged population. So people that are in addiction recovery, maternity shelters, have been sex trafficked. So people in transitions are really where we thrive because they're going, I've been through this thing, military, school, and now what am I getting to? Mm-hmm. And so I would say we specialize in the now what. We specialize in the now what. I just made that up. I don't know if I should ever use it again, but I'm steady here. I feel like
I have been in the now what a few times, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that really is the program, and the super cool part about it is that we do that classroom part of it, and we get to go spend time with the horses and really solidify through the horse experiential activities what we've just talked about in the classroom. And so that's truly how each session works. So 4-week program right now, we have all kinds of plans to do really cool things in the future to be able to expand that. But the funny backstory about it is, like, if somebody would have said to me, 2 years ago, hey, you're going to start this nonprofit doing equine assisted services in this kind of, learning and growth area, I would have been like, hey, you're crazy. Because I don't know anything about equine therapy or anything. I'm not a mental health professional. I don't know anything about equine assisted services, and I have to take care of my own horses. Like, I have no business doing this. But what was really interesting is after I left Gallup, I did some consulting on the side, and that kind of went haywire in the specific area that I was in. And I was like, I thought I was going to have to go back to corporate. Mm-hmm. And I just remember like collapsing and having this meltdown. And my husband came in and was like, holy smoke, what's going on? And I said, I can't go back. And maybe we should start a company and help people like our family, like, that need support as a family. So I did. The company was called Back to Family, and we hired, I'll call them kind of like high-end nannies, but it was like, it was not so much about taking care of the kids. It was about getting stuff done. So families could spend time with their kids. Right. So, so we did homework and dinner prep and running kids to soccer practice and all that stuff. And so when parents got home, they were like, now we get to spend time with family. Well, I got asked to speak at different women's events. And I'm like, well, I'm not talking about childcare. Like my kids, I'm not talking about childcare. So I started thinking, like, how do we raise our kids purposefully, and how do we raise them to have purpose? And so that really was like the catalyst for me thinking about purpose. And so then I thought, well, if I'm going to talk about purpose, what are the components of purpose? And that's when I started to think about, like, okay, well, you have these innate gifts. So those are your strengths. I'm tapping into my Gallup stuff, right? And then how do we wrap a value system around it that puts guardrails around that? And then we have to care about our work. Like, I can't hate this thing. I can't hate this. And that's my purpose. I have to love and have something that I'm willing to give up my time, talent, treasures for. And then it has to impact somebody else. Because purpose cannot be about just because about me, or I want to do it. It has to impact other people. So that was the formula. And it was crazy because when I, after we had this event here a couple of years ago, our community day, which is kind of again, when we had that event, I had all these people coming up and going, hey, I heard you're starting this nonprofit. I'm like, no, I am not doing that.
I'm resistant.
Yeah. But when I finally said, okay, fine, we're doing it. And I talked to our therapist and Delley, who co-teaches with me, and I said, you guys, what if we focus on what was right with people instead of what was wrong with them? So our program is truly focused on what's right. At no point do we say, okay, everybody has to, we're going to go around the room and tell us what's wrong with you. We're going to talk about your strengths, your values, your passions, your impact, and then ultimately declare that purpose. So that was like the very condensed. That was good for me because I got so much more to tell. But that was the journey of putting those pieces together to end up with this very cool job.
Absolutely. I have so many questions, but first, I want to go back to you being so averse to going back to corporate. What was your experience? Because, I want to be clear that there are some good things that come out of being in corporate America, right? There's some things that you learn that you might not have access to otherwise, right? But what for you did corporate take out of you?
Mm-hmm.
And then why would you not ideally want to come back in there?
Yeah. And this is what's like, I feel very, I feel very bad saying that I was in first going back to corporate, because for all intents and purposes, Gallup is a fantastic family, flex time, work with you, make all the things. But what I realized was I felt like it was more important to be there to hear those things my kids were saying right after school, because they say all the really important stuff the minute they get out of school. By dinner time, that stuff's over. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when I had that opportunity to consult, and I was able to walk across the street, pick them up from school and those things, I think that I was like, and I had time for them. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that rat race of 40, 50 hours a week, regardless of whether it's flexible or how that was, I didn't feel like I had the time to give them that I wanted to. And I had wasted a lot of that because I was I was a good corporate girl.
Right.
I worked hard and did all the right things, and I, put in the hours and all the stuff. And it was like, when I have time for you, I will. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was part of which is what led me to start Back to Family too. But I think that was the biggest thing. It wasn't, my bosses are bad or I feel held down. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was more just, I don't have the flexibility to be who I want to be for the people that were important in my life at that time.
I think that's interesting because, we have a lot of companies that talk about having this work-life balance, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's a true concept to some degree, because you spend so much time at work and such little time at home. But how, for people who aren't able to step away from corporate, right? Maybe they are a single income household and things like that. How would you say they could approach being able to give some of these things back to their kids or their families so that they can still help them move towards what their purpose is?
Yeah.
And not also be like dead to the world and be out of two, right? Physically. So how would you think that could be helpful for someone?
I think what I realized is it was easy to blame corporate. It was easy to blame corporate on my inner drive. Mm-hmm. That was an easy scapegoat for me. Mm-hmm. But what I think, because I can get busy doing all kinds of things, I think that it was the intentionality of, I'm going to be present when I'm here. And so even if that's 30 minutes of very carved out intentional time, I think eating dinner together is a beautiful thing. I grew up that way, and I didn't realize how many people don't do that any longer, but they're eating in front of the TV or everybody's on their phones and they're just kind of scattered around the kitchen. I think eating together is a really important aspect of that, but it's just, and it doesn't matter, whatever it is, being intentional with that time. So even if I were still doing, corporate stuff when my kids were older, intentional time.
So I want to take a moment and because if I'm listening to Ty, I'm like, oh, this is easy. It was easy for you, right? This journey is easy. You decided you wanted to do something. You went for it. You got it. I know that's not true, right? I know that's not how it works for any of us. What were some challenges for you, or what was the hardest part, just matriculating from your time at Gallup and then actually getting to here and then running Unbridled now? Like, what were the challenges where you were like, and you really had to dig deep and try to figure it
out? We're coming full circle now. Not being good enough. Mm-hmm. Like that's always been a challenge. I grew up with very encouraging parents, but they didn't have they weren't like, you could, I mean, they would say things like, you can do anything you want to do. But in reality, I don't think I didn't grow up with people pushing me because I was kind of an achiever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, wow, look at her go. Like not. And so I think in my head, I was like, yeah, but and I did fail along the way. Back to family, I mean, we invested a lot of money in that to make it work. When we moved to Texas, it did not translate well down here because of proximity of different things. And so I look at that and go, that was a fail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it will. In retrospect, I grieved the loss of that for a very long time. But if you want to talk, if you would ask me my PEM back in 2019 when I had to sign the dissolution papers, it was really, really hard on me because I failed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did I gain a lot of things out of that? Not going somewhere, did it become the big, cool thing I thought was going to be all over the country? No, it didn't. But there was a lot of good things that came out of that. But then you go, maybe I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good enough to start another business. I'm not good enough to go climb the corporate ladder. What am I going to do? And there was a lot of years between 2019 and 2018 when I started to go, this is not going to work out. When we moved to Texas, I'm like, this is not, no. But that's a long period of time where I kind of just flailed around. I don't know. I mean, I did some other little things. I had some other little jobs. None of them I didn't feel like I was at my capacity, but I also said, but maybe this is what you're capable of.
Okay, so how did you know when to quit for back to family? Like, did you, because I know if you're a fighter, you're going to fight, you're going to fight, you're going to fight. How did you know when you were like, okay?
Yeah, when we had invested, like we had literally second mortgage our house to make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's just what we're going to do. Like, we're going to take out a big loan and we're going to, like, that's what's going to keep this going. So I was paying a woman in Nebraska to run it. I was down here. And when I started, I didn't have enough, I didn't have the bench I needed to take care of all the families. And I started to have to be the bench. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I'm not home with my own kids because I'm taking care of other people's kids. Like, this is not okay. But I think when I realized that just the logistics of that, like in Lincoln, very quick, segue a bit, or like a science story, but in Lincoln, you have like all these little community colleges and University of Nebraska, and you can get from any side of Lincoln to the other side of Lincoln in 30 minutes.
Yes.
So we go to Austin, and it's like the people that could afford that service were here, and the college girls were like,
yes,
here, and they were driving 45 minutes to work 3 hours, and 45 minutes one way. And I went, okay, that's not working. Mm-hmm. And your professional nannies want to pay, like get paid $25, $30 an hour. Like, that's not working. And I just looked at my husband. I go, we can't keep doing this. Like, we can't keep experimenting with this any longer. Our personal finances are like at risk, like all of this stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember very specifically that fall having to say, we have to be done.
And then doing it, right? Going through with it. And he talks about grieving. I think sometimes we think of grief in like the form of loss as far as a loved one. Mm-hmm. But grieving the person or the thing that you used to be, how did you work through that grief?
I was grieving a lot of things. I was grieving the fact that I had built this thing that I thought was my purpose. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help people in this really cool way. And while it kind of looks like a family childcare-ish thing, it's really about giving people purposeful time. So I was like, and I remember thinking, God, I did not pay childcare. And that, like, there were two things I said I would never do in my life. Don't ever say that. That's my one word of advice to anybody. Don't say you will never do something, because you will end up doing that thing. I will never do anything that has to do with childcare. Mm-hmm. Why would I say that? Anyway, and I'll never homeschool my kids. And I did both. Not both my kids, but one of them. And so I was like, I didn't pick this to start with. And then here we are, and we've got all this money invested and all this time invested. So I was grieving something that I built that I thought was going to be a thing.
Right.
And not because I wanted it to be a thing, but because I was like, this is going to help people so much. And I was so excited about that, and working with ways like, how can we offer this to, people that can't afford it? Like, who do I need to partner with? There was just so much on the table. And then to have that go, I was like, what? And then that very much hit you're obviously not good. Mm-hmm. And so I had to grieve that too. Like, Ty, people have said in your past, like, you're not capable of that job. That's a job that you're not you don't have the right talent set to do. I was put in a box. Mm-hmm. I've been put in a box before. And I was like, no, you're right. I don't have that talent set. And I just proved it. I don't have the talent set to run an organization.
Interesting. And so now, okay, so that's actually a lot to take in, because how then do you muster up the energy and the confidence? And I mean, I guess some people just told you having this organization, you're like, I guess we're going to do this. But how do you have the confidence then to move from, I'm not good enough, I can't run an organization, you're right about me, to Unbridled?
Yeah, that's been a journey. It's still a journey. I think that, again, if somebody would have put this job, like, let's say Unbridled was created by somebody else, and they would have said, hey, would you like to do it? I would say, absolutely not. I'm not good enough to do that job. I'm not good enough to run that organization. So I think that, I probably would still say that today. If I had another nonprofit, I would go, I don't know if I'm a real person. But I will say that so much of this was, and it's the reason I was so resistant to it, for a month in a row. Like, people would contact me and go, hey, I was at your community event, I heard you're starting. And I was like, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking specifically, I cannot put myself out there like that again, because it was so hard. It was such hard work, and then it all was for nothing. Now, I know it's not for nothing, because it seriously led into how we structured our program, but and I was like, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, I'm not doing that. And then time 3, my husband was, hi, you're supposed to do this. And I said, I can't. I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about nonprofits, mental health, horses, none of this stuff. And he said, yeah, but you know how to put a team of people together to do. So go maximize the talents that you do have, which is communication and, structure, discipline, all those things. So go back to that talent thing again and figure out, how do you do that? And then put the right people around you. So my board of directors, very specifically chosen because they bring different talents. Yes. My team, very much specifically because they have different talents. Now, I have to swim in these other lanes because I'm kind of a pretty, other than my team that does the programming, I operationally day-to-day, I'm it. This is me. So I have to swim in lanes that are not my strengths, but I also am smart enough to know now when to tap people that it is their strengths. Yes. And then I get to go back and swim. Again. So I really do think that the courage to do that again was because I knew I know more about myself now. Mm-hmm. And then also, I think the other part of that is that when God puts something on your heart and then puts a whole bunch of people around you and keeps shoving people at you, going, and you're going to need them and them, and you go, no, I don't want to. And it keeps happening. And then you realize that there's such a need for people to understand what's right with them. I grew up with people being encouraging in that. What I'm finding through this program is that there's a lot of people, most people are not running around going, wow, I know all the great things about me. They're running around going, I know what's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that you are exactly right. And it's so interesting because I wouldn't do a podcast if God hadn't said, that's not something that I don't I'm Shelly. I don't like to be vulnerable. I don't really want to talk about myself. I don't want to be in the spotlight. And even starting this podcast, people are like, well, how are you going to have a podcast if you don't want to tell people about it? And I'm like, well, that's a little nuance I got to figure out, right? But I think that kind of moving into something because it's naturally what happens. And what I'm finding is a lot of people are doing that. I do have a question about equine therapy or just equine, like programs generally. Because first, I'm almost a little bit afraid of horses. I'm not all the way, but like
I think there's a good healthy.
Yes. Like I can go and stand my horse and like pet it and be like nice horse, but I'm also like that's a powerful animal. But how do horses or animals in general work to help people with their mental health?
Yeah. I would say that I am still learning the answer to that question as the so not all knowing anxiety director. I think what's really cool is that first of all, horses specifically, and I'll talk to that because I know more about that than every other animal, but I do know that there's a lot of animals that are very therapeutic. They're prey animals, right? So in the wild, if anything is going to they are not the fighters.
Yes.
Are the flankers.
Yes.
They're getting the heck out of there. So they are very conscientious of when somebody has energy that they're giving off that feels threatening, right? So we have people come through the program and they're anxious and they're all that. The horses are like, oh, something's getting ready to go down. I gotta get out of here. So they're very reflective of our emotions. And so that is probably one very important thing. The other part is that, well, I would say there's two other things, and this is not clinical stuff. This is just in my experience, what I have picked out as my kind of key three things that I think and it's easy to explain. The second thing is you have to be very mentally present when you are working with 1,000-pound animal.
Yes.
So people you realize are like, oh, we're with the horses. They are not daydreaming any longer or thinking about anything besides the fact that they've got this very large animal in front of them. So that is the second thing. The third thing is, and this is interesting, and I need to read the book someday. It's up on my shelf. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
And you read it? Yes. Good for you. That's really thick, and I feel like it's going to take me a bit on audio. Oh, okay. Very good. That's it. It's very fun. But that movement, people's trauma and people's the things that have happened to them that cause them to be in spaces where they need help happened with their whole body, right? Through their senses. So it would only make sense that getting out of that is probably not going to only happen through talk therapy for a lot of people, but it's going to happen through using their whole body again. So the movement of the activities that we do, I have a very firm belief that they're now moved into their midbrain. Look at me like Jody is so proud. We've now moved into our midbrain because movement is where we start to get to the point where we can think with our whole brain. And so I do think the movement of the activities is also part of what's very therapeutic with them.
Okay, so you are not a horse person, right? You are not a mental health professional. You are not a nonprofit guru, right?
I do not sound qualified for this job.
And yet you have this program.
Yes.
Right? And I love this, though. I love this because if you think about it, I'm going to get all like preachy for a moment, but right. In the Bible, God didn't choose the people who were like the people who had all the stuff together, right? And knew what to do. And so I think that sometimes we feel like we have to have it together. We have to be this person, their credentials that I need to get. Let me learn this so that I can be the perfect person for this. And sometimes at our imperfection, it leads us to be able to reach people in a way because we don't have the knowledge bias because we don't know anything, right? So it's one of those things that I think can be helpful. But since you're living this right now, how do you navigate that on a day-to-day basis where it's like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And but I'm going to do it for someone else. So how do you navigate that?
Okay. So this is what's so interesting. Mm-hmm. Two of my strengths that I fully rejected at the beginning are input and learn. So I'm a learner. So I'm a sponge for information. So I'm constantly like, and it's not even when I say learn, I don't mean that I'm going out and reading everything there is to be read. Like, my gosh, I should be reading a lot more than I do, but I'm constantly soaking in information. So it's like, I have conversations with people and I go, oh, I just learned that about this. Now that's something I get to add to my toolbox. And when I'm having a podcast, I'm being able to communicate that. So I think because I am such a learner, that is partly what makes me successful. And I never think I have all the answers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important all the time, right? Like dealing with people, whether they are an expert or not, but when they think they're the expert, I think it's problematic. I am probably almost to a fault. I will get too many opinions and too much information, and then I can get stuck, or I can be kind of like, wait, should we do this or should we do this? And every once in a while, I go to my husband again, my partner, right? It doesn't matter. It could have been a coworker or whomever. And I go and I say, hey, got a lot of things I just learned. I need to start. And he said, he'll ask me questions and just go, you know what to do. You know what direction you need to take. So I think that leadership for me doesn't come because I know everything. My leadership comes because I take in information and I've learned, and then I'm willing to communicate that and share with other people.
That's awesome. What you speak a lot about your husband or your partner.
Yeah.
How have you built community to help you with these things, that not only with the things when you have all the information, but also when you know the person to reach out to? Because one of the things, and I've done this, I'm guilty of this still to this day sometimes. Things get rough. I go inside. I'm an introvert. I'm just going to think about it, read some articles or something, figure it out, right? Yeah. It's probably not the thing that you're supposed to do, right? You just ask the person that knows how to do. But how, where you first had the courage to be like, hey, I think you can help. Also, how have you built the community to kind of work through that?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I've given a lot of thought to like how that happened. So I think I just, first of all, don't have fear when I think somebody else is an expert in a certain area. I have zero problem like being super vulnerable and saying, I know I'm an executive director of this, but you are too, and you've done this for a lot longer than me. I don't know what I'm doing. Teach me. I'm a very vulnerable person and authentic when it comes to, I do not claim to know. Mm-hmm. I don't claim to know anything. I know things, but not a lot of stuff. So I think that I do probably, and again, this is definitely comes from my time of seeing, I can stand in a room and go, I can start naming people's strengths and kind of thinking through that. So, just through the willingness to ask questions and start seeking people in different spaces. But I will tell you, a lot of things have kind of fallen in my lap too. Like people show up at my door going, hey, I'm an equine specialist. And they're like, that's such a rare thing. Like, how did you find me? But I communicate, I think, well, and I think part of the building the community thing for me too is one of the things on my declaration of purpose is that people feel safe when they talk to me. And so I think that I give people a voice. So building that community is partly about asking lots of questions and doing and getting learning, but it's also about just seeking out people that are going to be, and then letting them be the expert in the room. And so then that builds community because they're like, hey, that was cool. Like she let me make these decisions about this. Yeah, because you're the expert and I'm not. So I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you have. I think that the answer to the way that you answered it is that you are able to see people for who they are. And then you don't have a fear of asking for help when you must recognize the strength. Yeah. And so that was a very convincing. Oh,
good job. Good job. Thank you for summarizing my
No, but I think that's something that I don't know that people recognize that as a skill, right? To be able to understand who can help you and to have the discernment to know I need to ask this person for this help and not be stubborn. Like, Cheremma, I can be very stubborn. I actually had an argument back in high school about me being stubborn. And there are so many people saying you're stubborn. And I was like, I am not stubborn. And so if you guys are listening, I will admit now that I can be a little stubborn. And God will probably tell you that I could be stubborn too. So Unbridled has been a labor of love and grit, I think.
Yeah.
What keeps you going right now?
Well, it's getting up every day thinking about a couple of things. So getting up every day and still building, right? Building. So that now we're tapping into like just my operating system. That's what I love to do. So building is very much motivational, but bigger than that is knowing that if I can help pull, when I say I'm not doing anything, but if I can set up a framework where people can come through our program and be walking in the door feeling like I'm worthless, I don't have anything to give. I've been dealing with depression, anxiety, all the things, and that spirals into this space of hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And if I can be a part of putting something together that lets people walk out of the program and go, Pete, I know what's right with me, and I'm here for a reason, and helping them find their purpose, that is super motivational. And I'm just being transparent about, where we are as an organization. I mean, we're a year and so we started in January of 2024. So we're a year and almost 9 months into this, right? I have not taken a dime. Mm-hmm. So I'm working for free. I hope it's not always the case. I don't always want to work for free, but it's those two drivers that's why I do it. Because if I can help people break that cycle of anxiety, depression, and ultimately hopelessness by helping them understand all the great things about them and what they're here to do, that's worth it all day long.
That's amazing. We haven't talked much, I guess we have in the grand scheme of things, but we haven't talked much about mental health and its role in how we see our perspective on life, right? Like, and moving through it, and then how it can become what I call the suck, right? Where you can get kind of stuck in the suck, where it's like you're seeing you have the weight of everything on you. Yeah. And it's going poorly and you can't see the light, right? And it's just maybe a little bit of hope, but it's waning, right? And you have that suck from your experience in the mental health world, right? Everybody's not going to be able to come unbridled, right?
Yeah, that's true.
How would you advise a person, right, that's maybe stuck in the suck? If somebody called you and said, "Hi, I'm stuck in the suck right now," I might have to trademark stuck in the suck. They say, "I'm stuck in the suck right now, and I'm trying to get out of it. I don't know what my purpose is. Can you give me one sentence, one word, or something to give me some hope?"
Yeah.
How would you tell them to kind of move through that space to get to the other side of some gratitude and maybe trying to find joy?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna look really similar to what I do feel like you have to ultimately identify things in yourself that you do think are right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean go take a Gallup. That doesn't mean that at all. I think, though, if you really self-assess and say, what are the things, when do people count on me? When do I feel like I'm fulfilled? So you start to identify through that these gifts, right? When you start using those every day, you start feeling a little bit more success. And so I don't want to be formulaic about that, but I would say that you have to start somewhere and believing that there is an answer. First of all, I think that might be the first thing is you have a purpose. If you're breathing a breath and you're still on this planet, you have breath to breathe, you have a purpose. So you have to believe that first. If you believe that, then you got to figure out what that is, right? And so let's backtrack Let's figure out what you're good at. And I think though it is that it's how do we take that talent and start moving in a direction? And so if I had to really just boil it down, know that you're here for a reason. Now your job is to figure out what that reason is. What are you good at, and how can you take that and impact somebody else with it? Like that's
You just put an operation spin on it.
yes. I mean, so I know. I'm telling you. And so I love it. I love it. Yes, you have to do that because then you go. Part of this is really dicey saying this, and gosh, every mental health professional, I might get fired. I don't know. My board of directors can do that. As much as I believe mental health, obviously, it's a very real thing. It's very diagnosed like that. I believe all of those things. I believe that people stay in those spaces longer when everything is focused on me. I am stuck. I am anxious. I don't know what else to do. I am depressed. I can't, and everything is focused on themselves. Mm-hmm. If we start to just think about what is somebody else doing? How can I help somebody else? I think just helping other people starts to get people unstuck.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I've spoken about before on this podcast and other places is that we lie to ourselves a lot. Like our brain can get us convinced that we are way worse than we really are. And so just like you're talking to me now, and you're like, I am unqualified, and I'm like, I don't know who's more qualified, right? But we don't see ourselves in the same light that other people see us because your strengths are emanating from you, and I can see them, but you don't have an outside view, right?
Right.
And so I think that if you start to focus on other people, they can reflect back the good things that you're giving. And I think that is what you're saying is that when you stay within yourself, you get to all the stuff. You start to think all those negative things, and you can really, really get stuck in those things. Yeah. But giving it to someone else, it really is something that allows you to get it back in a way. Because people will say, Cheremma, you're so hard on yourself. Why are you so hard? Give yourself some grace. I always want to punch. But they're not wrong, right? That's the stubbornness in me. Yeah. And I think that that's what people sometimes don't really grasp is that helping people will give you an idea of what's wrong, like what you don't do well and what you do very well. And I think that is also the advantage of having a community around, right? Because somebody's going to be tapping you. I don't know how many people have people that tap you to do things. You're like, I guess I can do it. And they're like, yeah, you did this so well. You're like, I guess I do. And I didn't have a nonprofit. Yeah. So I think that when we talk about that community is something, and I am guilty of not owning a community. I said that before, like, keep it to yourself, right? But I think that it is important so that people understand that, hey, speaking to somebody else, even if it's not just there, you're getting out and doing something with other people and for other people, can be very, very helpful. Yeah. I am going to be respectful of your time. So we're going to ask a few things. The first question is going to be, what's the hardest thing for you right now?
Right now. I think that as much as I do have so much purpose in the operational pieces of things and the actually helping people piece of things, it does get very lonely to run something day in and day out by yourself. And so until I can have that team of people that I talked about, I have them peripherally, but not necessarily in my day-to-day operations. So I think not like that is tough. And having to wear all the hats, like I said, now I have to be in all the swim lanes right now, right? So I have to be the fundraiser. I have to be the community engagement person. I have to be the marketer of the programs and the social media person and all this stuff. And I'm starting to realize like going to colleges that are local and getting some interns is a really cool thing. And I actually think I might have one here soon. But I think having to wear all the hats, which means that I get bogged down mentally and emotionally. Like it's draining, right? When we don't use our strengths, we're not operating on these things. So that's hard. And then just having a vision for what I think this can be, not just here in Central Texas, but to be able to take this program and get it in a position where we can go, hey, Boys Ranch in Amarillo.
Yeah.
Here's this package with a bow on it. Just just put it in place. And I'll show you how. She did. But then being able to do that all over the country is what I like. I just have this vision, and so it's so hard when you already have that vision, kind of, and you're going, oh, we're still like doing this every day. So I can't get there fast enough. So I would say that is hard. It's hard.
And how are you taking care of yourself so that you don't get stuck in the suck? How are you taking care of yourself so that you can get up every day and still wear all those hats to keep moving?
Yeah. I have very good friends that are just super encouraging. Again, I'm going back to my husband. Like, he is my ultimate numero uno best friend. Like, we are, So that is super important for me. Truly getting up every morning and spending time with the Lord. Like, and my faith is super important to me. And I think that helps me stay just mentally prepared and going, like, consider it joy when various trials are like, oh yeah, there's that verse again. But I think that definitely is part of it. And then taking time. I could be in my office from the minute I get up in the morning until I go to bed at night and never leave because I'd have so much to do. But taking time to say, guess what, Ty? It's 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon. Go outside and just sit and be for a little while.
Yes.
Go jump on one of those horses and just take a ride in the pasture and just give myself that space to truly just go, because those are refreshing times. Like, that happens really quickly. So it doesn't mean I need to be out and go on I don't go on big fancy vacations. Like, this is what we've chosen to dedicate our time and money to. And so it's just taking those little things and recharging.
That's awesome. I say this almost every podcast because I say that's awesome all the time. And I really do think it's awesome, but I feel like it's like, I'm not just saying, I really, really do feel like it's awesome. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. One, I want to, and I told you I was going to be respectful of your time, but I forgot to ask you this because one thing that I wanted to get back to was the now what or the what now?
Yeah.
The now what? I feel like a lot of people hit a now what in their lives. And a now what is like, I don't know, even if it's your kids have gone off to college and you're here now, or, you are used to being a mother or wife, something drastic happens, or you're used to being in corporate and you lose your job, or you just woke up and you realize you're unfulfilled, right? Yeah. What would you say to that person who is in that space, who doesn't necessarily fit in the categories that Unbridled is there? Yeah. Like, what is that person? What would you say to them?
Well, so I'll answer that two ways. I think, first of all, it is interesting. It's how we ended up with this, like, Friday group that we have. I say Fridays, it could change, but this adult programming that we have, because I will have people come through that are just, that there's no parameters on who they are. So that is kind of one of our spaces, and we will do executive retreats and all kinds of things to help people with that now what, like the burnout entrepreneur that doesn't know, and they've like literally wasted their life away on building this fantastic corporation, and now their family's a disaster and their kids are a disaster and nobody likes them. I mean, all those things. So I would say that there is space for that in this program, but I think that being in a now what when there isn't Unbridled is really truly going back to that. Gosh, it's just that path, right? It's that figuring out how do I now go and figure out what my purpose is, because that figuring that out will lead to that fulfillment. I personally believe so.
I think, okay. And so we have two questions, and I think you'll be able to answer them pretty easily. The first is, if people want to get into a program at Unbridled, or they want to reach out and figure out how they can either help or be part of something that's going on, how would they do that?
The easiest quickest way is to go to our website because we have all the program information is out there, the contact forms and all those types of things. So that's unbridledtx.org. Is the best way to get a hold of us.
Okay, awesome. And what does good enough today mean to you?
I think that is really about waking up in the morning and putting forth the effort that I need to take that next step, right? I don't have to figure out if I'm going to be the executive director of Unbridled for my whole life, forever, and eternity, but like today, what do I need to do personally in my faith walk, in my professional walk? Like, what does today look like? So I say, I guess what is good enough is that I am keeping in mind all of those areas of my life that are important to me. And you've touched on this, right? So like to me, the spiritual piece of things, your physical, emotional, mental well-being, and saying, what do I need to do to move that bar just one more step today?
That's a great point. And I think that's a great segue for everyone to understand that even though you might be stuck in the suck, you can be hopeful for tomorrow, but understand that you are absolutely good enough today.
Hopeful for tomorrow, good enough today. Oh yeah, hopeful for tomorrow, good enough today.